When it comes to rewiring the brain or neuroplasticity or changing our habits, mentally practicing something is like practicing it in real life. Your brain doesn't actually know the difference. You've laid down that neural pathway and all you have to do is just strengthen it through practice. So it's super powerful.
Welcome to the Eat, Live and Move podcast by Miyagi, a space where we bring you the latest science-backed conversations, expert insights and practical tips relating to all things health and wellness. I'm Kate Krieg, your very own transformation coach.
And I'm Dr. Gina Cleo, your personal habit change expert.
And together we're on a mission to help you improve your health and transform your habits and mindset so you can eat, live and move better one episode at a time without the fluff or the fads. Hi Gina, so good to be back with you for part 2.
Sure is. We talked about self-awareness last time, didn't we?
We did. And one of the things that we spoke about, which I felt would be really valuable for us to deep dive into, is when you shared the story about you being at the supermarket.
Oh my gosh, my confession.
Your confession.
The capsicum confession.
The 10 cents you owe somebody.
Sorry, Coles.
Because you beautifully pointed out something which was huge, which is the environment that you were in created this change in the way that you acted and therefore you felt icky. So can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I was sharing the story and saying how my values are that I don't steal, I don't cheat, I don't lie. I grew up in a strict Christian home and we've just got really strong morals and values in my family. And that's just how I've always been. And I like that about myself. It's nothing that I want to change. And I also really, really value honesty. So it's one of like my big priorities in friendships and in life. But yeah, I was in the supermarket and I put through a capsicum as a green capsicum rather than a red capsicum as I was self-checking out because it was like a tiny bit cheaper, right, per kilogram. And I would normally never do anything like that. But the environment that I was in, what I could see and observe was that most people, and I say most, and I don't say most lightly, like truly most people were just walking straight out of the supermarket with a backpack full of food that they hadn't paid for. And so that environment made me feel like, oh, come on, man, like I'm paying for every single thing here. If they can get away with all of that, then why can't I just have a little, like 10 cents off my bill?
Yeah.
And in the moment, I felt really naughty doing it. But afterwards, I felt awful. Like I was like, oh, I didn't need to do that. Like it just didn't feel good. And it's not a big deal. Like it's just a capsicum, but
Of course, it's not. But it was such a beautiful story and it highlights something really valuable. A beautiful story. And it highlights something valuable, and that is this was an environment that you were in within a very short space of time. And this is where we're sort of going to be heading with this podcast, which is imagine the environment that you've spent most of your life in. And how you act. I mean, you were really clear, like this is completely opposite to how I would ever act. That was obvious to you. You knew that. But imagine being so conditioned by your upbringing, by the societal influences, by your home environment, by partners, family, etc., that you don't even realize how out of alignment it feels and how you act in front of those people or within those environments.
So true. And I think of this when it comes to culture, like, I've traveled to other places around the world where they eat things that I would just never eat. Like I was in Peru and the Sunday roast that they have is an entire guinea pig that's like,
oh my gosh,
deep fried. And then they put it on your plate, teeth and all. And I was like, I can't believe they eat guinea pig here. But then I was like, well, we eat chicken and we eat beef and we eat pork. Like, why is a guinea pig any different to these other animals? And then I think of things, where people eat dogs and dolphins. And that really challenges me because I could never, ever imagine myself doing that. But the culture I grew up in doesn't allow for that. Whereas other cultures, it's entirely normal to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if you grow up in a culture where it's normal to eat dog, you'd be like, well, you guys eat, I don't know, pigs. Like, why wouldn't you eat dog? It's still an animal. But I'm like, no, dogs have souls. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, how do I know pigs don't have souls? I don't know that. I'm not even convinced they don't.
Yeah.
I just grew up in an environment that told me what was right and wrong.
Yeah. And so now what you're showing me is how obvious that is to you in one environment to the next. And then you think about what it's like if you are living in the same country, you are exposed to a certain friendship circle, very similar societal norms and the ways in which we think and behave and what we're exposed to. So it seems like these two are almost exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
now it becomes harder to actually see environmentally if this is allowing me to live out my best life, my best potential, if this is in alignment with me or not.
Yeah, true. You have to really like go within and be like, why does this make me uncomfortable?
Yeah.
What is it about it that doesn't align? And for me, it's like I have a dog. I love dogs. I would never eat a dog. But, I'm sure if I had a pet cow, I would love it equally the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And I
just
don't
hope.
want to be vegetarian because I get protein deficient, iron deficient really easily.
Yes.
So then that challenges me in that way. From an ethical point of view, I would like to be vegetarian, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not because my health, like I've tried being veg, it doesn't work for my health. Other people are different. For me, it didn't work. So I don't even want to think about it because I want to keep eating the things that my body needs.
But I think what's interesting is you have thought about it because you have tried it, you've felt it, you've thought about it, and now you've been able to upgrade this original thought of perhaps I could go vegetarian, and I tried it, I tested it, it didn't work for me, and this is where I'm comfortable being with. And that's exactly what I would encourage most people to be doing with different aspects of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a thoughtfulness, it's a contemplation. And this is why we're talking about environments because, we went Peru versus, we did something quite obvious, didn't we? And dogs versus guinea pigs and, or like chickens versus guinea pigs. Like, it seems so obvious. But now we're talking about day to day influences, day to day, our everyday existence when what we're exposing ourselves to, the news, social media, what's within our existing environment that we're seeing, hearing, exposed to, the people we're surrounding ourselves with.
Yeah. Yeah.
How in alignment or out of alignment is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me from a habit perspective, how easy is it to change a habit within the existing environment? Is that even the way to put it? Like, I don't know. I don't want to set anyone's like belief systems the wrong way.
Well, let me give you an example. Like, let's say the first thing you do in the morning is you check your phone and then you find yourself spiraling through, a social media binge. And now you've missed your Pilates class and you're on Marketplace for 2 hours and you don't even know what you're looking for. Okay. Let's say that that's the habit that you're finding yourself in and you really want to break it. It's really difficult to still have your phone there and say to yourself, I'm going to have enough willpower or self-control to not look at my phone. That's all well and good when you're setting the goal. It's when you're fired up, you're the most motivated, like you're into it. And then it comes, say, the morning, and now you're like, oh, I'm just going to check the time, or I'll just check if my post had any comments. I'll just be on there really quickly. And one thing leads to another, and we can justify any behavior, right? And that's what we end up doing. So without changing the environment, we are depending so much on our self-control, which is an exhaustible resource. It's something that we don't have unlimited amounts of, right? What we would be much better off doing is changing our environment where we're removing access to the phone from bed. So I charge my phone in my ensuite where I can't reach it from my bed. So I don't get into I couldn't even sit and scroll in bed if I wanted to because I can't reach my phone. And so it's much easier to change a habit when our environment is conducive to the goals that we have set for ourselves.
Wow, there we go. Well done. That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say, something like that. And exactly one of the things that I did is alcohol was something that I was consistently reaching for. The fridge was something I was consistently reaching for. And we removed the Bordeaux wine rack that we had front and center in our lounge room. We removed that and put it in the cupboard so it was out of sight. So now I had to start bringing some effort into that
Yeah.
decision. It
Yeah.
wasn't just an automatic response. It was, hang on a minute, now I'm trying to make choices that are in alignment with who I want to be, which is what we spoke about last time. And so when we talk about an environment cleanse, I think about things like, what are the things that are influencing me and making me feel a bit icky? Because remember, that's what you felt. You felt this
Yeah.
ickiness. And it's so hard to reflect on what is actually making me feel icky. And that's why connection to self is really important. But what's also making me act out of alignment with who I really want to be, or the goals that I've set for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
How do you go with that? I mean, you're not a very routine person, so
I'm not. I find though that I can be, just like many people, I'm very slightly influenced by the people that I'm around. And these are the ways that I notice that I'm probably a lot more influenced than I realize. But I've got like a group of friends who will swear a lot, and I probably find myself swearing a bit more when I'm around them. Or I've got a group of friends who just love, certain things. And so then I'll find myself appreciating those things a bit more when I'm with them compared to when it's just me. Now, I'm not I'm not misaligned with my values in either of those scenarios, right? Because I don't really like I'm not the kind of person who feels that I need to blend with the crowd to feel accepted to some degree. I still follow social norms and all of that, of course. But I also am really happy to be um I'm happy to be outspoken. I'm happy
mm,
to like go against the grain. So for me it's like a little bit different. But of course, I work in the space of sexual misconduct at Bond University, and the social influence that creates an environment where harassment is acceptable, or it makes you the cool person, or victim blaming becomes the norm because that's what's in the environment and the social outcomes it's crazy to see, but it has a huge influence on people's behaviors and therefore habits.
and you said an interesting comment, which is, it's not so much acting out of alignment with my values, and I would go one step further and say it's acting out of alignment with who I really want to be.
Ooh, yeah.
The
Yes.
identity that I'm striving for.
Mm.
When I was doing my MBA, I needed to do a lot of my readings and assignments on the weekend. And that was around the time where I had a friend who I dived into the relationship with, and she would always come over and hang out at our house, and we'd be having dinners, and one thing would lead to another, and we're having a few drinks, and she would stay the night. And in the mornings I would always feel a bit dusty and not really able to apply myself to my MBA. And I remember thinking, what is it that's getting in my way? And what's not quite in alignment? Having her over for dinner, fine. But it was when it was an extended stay where we drank a little bit more and when we were sort of influencing each other in many ways. And I remember I wrote down going, what is in my way of me being able to fulfill my goals and my objectives and who I really want to be in this world? I chose to do my MBA and I want to learn, but this is stopping me. And that was one of the
Mm.
things. And I wrote it
Wow.
down. I reflected on it. And then I role played how I was going to say no in the moment. And I genuinely role
Ooh.
played with myself. I wrote down ideas and I said it out loud.
God, you're good.
And then at the time, when it came time, she was saying, oh, I'm just going to get no, she didn't say Uber. So she said, I'm going to stay the night again. I'll just stay the night at your house. And I said, actually, I do really want to do my MBA in the morning. Maybe staying the night's not a good idea. Her response, oh yeah, of course, no worries. I'll just get an Uber home.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
you're like, oh gosh, I was so worried.
Yeah, you would have like worked yourself up to be like, I hope she doesn't get offended and this.
Yeah,
And she was like, oh, yeah, sweet.
I
Yeah.
could have, and she could have responded in a way that wasn't in
Mm.
alignment with what I was hoping. But I was okay with that because this was my goals and my desires, and this was influencing me in a way that didn't quite feel right or wasn't really helping me.
But two things there. You had really strong intention and you'd practiced it. You had like mentally rehearsed what you were going to say. Do you think that those two things were essential for the success of this outcome?
Absolutely. We spoke in our last episode about familiarity and
Hmm.
autopilot and patterns. Yeah. And the familiarity was me to go, oh, that's fine. No worries. Okay, stay and we'll just keep drinking. But because I'd mentally rehearsed, and I want to talk to you about visualization because you just lined it up for me beautifully. But because I mentally rehearsed, I thought it through and I was intentional and I was okay with whatever response I got back. I
Yeah.
was okay
Okay.
with it, but I did rehearse it. It made it so much easier. I spent a lot of time visualizing who I wanted to be and that environment that I wanted to expose myself to. And that would enable me. What's your view on visualization? What do you know about
Oh.
mental rehearsal?
It's funny because as a researcher, I never thought that I would talk about visualization, but I do a lot. I've written about it in my book, and it's something that I often share about on social media because the research around the power of visualization is incredible. Like, there was a study where, for example, they had two groups of people. They had one group mentally rehearsing this sequence on a piano. So they didn't touch the piano. And then the other group actually practiced physically on the piano. And they gave them a week to practice or mentally like practice. And a week later, they got them to do the test. So they actually got everybody on the piano doing the sequence. And the results of both groups were pretty much exactly the same, which is
Wow.
mind blowing
Wow.
that you can be just as good as somebody who's been physically practicing the whole week. And you didn't touch a piano, but now you're just as good because you were able to mentally and visually practice. And it's, when it comes to rewiring the brain or neuroplasticity or changing our habits, mentally practicing something is like practicing it in real life. Your brain doesn't actually know the difference. So if you want to say like get up in the morning and do some exercise, if you like get in bed the night before and mentally rehearse your alarm going off, you feeling good, you getting up, getting your active way, walking out the door and getting some activity done, you're much more likely to do it because now you've just laid the foundation in your brain. You've laid down that neural pathway and all you have to do is just strengthen it through practice. So it's super powerful.
It's so funny you should talk about that example because when I was wanting to do my walking, started
Mm.
off walking when I got home, I wanted to shift it to the mornings. And I would mentally rehearse myself going for my walk in the mornings and I'd listen to the bird, like imagining listening to the birds. And, the quirky part of my personality, I'd always trip over in my, in my visualization.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So weird. I don't know, the self-sabotage of tripping up. And
It's
then
your
I'd like,
negative bias.
it's probably the negative bias. And I used to just rewind, go, no, 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 start again. And I would start again and I'd get to that point on my walk and I wouldn't trip.
Oh, you're hilarious.
But it's so helpful. And I think what we're actually touching on right now is an internal environment, isn't it? It's
Yes.
creating the internal environment. It's reflecting deeply on what are the things that are enabling me to fulfill my goals and achieve the things. And often I hear a lot of my clients say to me, I'm about to go out with my friends for dinner or something, and I'm so worried. I'm so worried because I'll overeat. I'll order all the wrong things. If they want to get dessert, I'll want to get dessert. I'll overdrink. I'll do all these things. And there's just this fear. And often I encourage them to number one, figure out why you would or wouldn't want to. Like what positive impact is it having and what unhelpful or negative impact is that those actions having in your life, to bring some
Yeah.
consciousness to it and to rehearse saying, I don't need it. I'm okay. Thank you. But if you did want it, do it, of course. But from a mindset perspective, it's just when we are sabotaging ourselves in each moment and what we can do some pre-thinking, pre-planning so that we're more intentional in the moment.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Obviously, I know that you know about the research and the intention behavior gap that you've spoken about.
Mm.
How does that align or work with those concepts.
Yeah, I mean, it totally aligns. And I think that pre-planning creates a stronger intention. And we know that strong intentions will either strengthen the habits that you want to create or also weaken the habits that you want to break, depending on what your intention is. So strong intentions are powerful. And then having them before the event is even easier. It's even easier for you because then when you're there, you're not just sort of like dancing in the wind with what's going on. You've already made up your mind about something. Yes, your mind might change and that's okay. But I think you've been more intentional about the decision compared to if you're just there and now you start drinking with your friends and that's not what you wanted to do. And that next morning you feel a bit bad for yourself, like about it. And, I was at a wedding recently and we were on the third day. So they had like a welcome dinner and then this beautiful wedding. And the day after it was like the after party. They call it the recovery, but it was really the after party. And I remember that day thinking, I don't really want to drink because I just want to feel good. We're starting a 3-week holiday and I just want to wake up and feel really nice. But the people at the wedding were all childhood friends, people I'd gone to school with, and we're having such a good time. And I thought, I've got 2 options. I can either go to bed and then get up in the morning and do the workout that I'd planned, or I can stay up and hang out a little bit more. And I had this conflict where I was like, what do I do? And I went to bed and then like 10 minutes later, I was like, no, I don't want to be in bed. Yeah. And I got up and I went back out and I hung out with my friends. And I was so glad I did because most of them went home the next day. And we don't live in the same city. So I got to connect. I got to chat with them. And it was worth it. It was worth being tired the next day. So I think having the flexibility is also important. But the caveat here is I was intentional with my decision to stay up. I wasn't just being swung by my environment. I was like, yep, tomorrow I'm not going to feel as good. I'm going to miss my workout. I'm going to be a bit tired, but I've got the day to do it. So it's all good. And I'm going to stay up a bit later.
Oh, and you know what you did as well is how did you become intentional in that moment when it's so easy to be impulsive? What you did is you gave yourself a pause between stimulus and response. Here's everybody here.
True.
I'm going to go to bed. I mean, well done. Congratulations for strengthening your reflective muscle to be able to actually leave in the first place. Like, hats off. Incredible effort. I guess you were on day 3. So
I was exhausted.
Exhausting. But then to be able to go away, you've paused. We talked about it before. How do you get yourself into your reflective brain to make conscious decisions? And you made a choice. You know what? I am going to stay up and I'm okay with this. This is the kind of reflection that I just absolutely encourage us all to do before and in the moment. And how do you do it in the moment? You have that pause between stimulus and response. You talk about that pause. That's how I overcame my alcohol habit. That's how I was able to say no to doing things that didn't feel right. That ultimately, it was just an autopilot thing.
Yeah. I actually think that so much of our power lies in that space between the stimulus and the reaction, or the stimulus and the habit. There's so much of our power is in that gap where we get to stop and make an intentional decision. And I know that you said in the last episode how you've had clients who they've done, like, you've asked them to do 3 deep breaths, and how much that's transformed their lives, whether they're, not binge eating as much or not overeating as much or not drinking as much, or just like the negative self-talk has changed. And it just takes that moment of stillness, doesn't it?
It does. It's the ability to be present, to reflect, and to assess what's happening in your environment. I think that's the key thing that I'd really want others to think about is what is happening in your environment that is causing you to not act in alignment with who you want to be, or creating negative reactions or emotions within you. Because that was what was happening to me. It was a very emotional decision to sit on the couch or to drink alcohol or to eat from the fridge. And perhaps it's not like that for other people. Perhaps it's just literally in my fridge, 80% of the things that are in my fridge are what I don't want to eat. Perhaps that's what's happening with people. So a simple swap environmentally can add value.
Yeah. Huge.
You know what I mean? Like
Big time.
removing alcohol, all the influences that we have, social media, like what is that doing to us?
Yeah.
being around other people, when you're around friendship circles and they're going and ordering things or doing things that you don't really want to be doing, most of us conform.
Yeah.
A large portion of us will just do whatever the crowd is doing.
It's the easiest option.
And it's the easiest option. And it doesn't make us look out of character or out of place or like we don't belong. You know, you said, I'm happy to be outspoken. I'm happy to go against the grain in many ways and to stand out from the crowd. But the majority of people are scared to stand out. We're gregarious. We love to belong in groups and tribes and packs. Like, it feels safe for us. So we need to be able to pre-plan some of this stuff, to think through what we want our choice to be in the moment, and to be able to think, would I be okay if I said no to this? Could I be okay? What's the worst that could happen? Will my friends hate me? Will my friends think that? Insert whatever's coming up for you if I'm not going to do what, I've always done.
Yeah. I almost feel like some of the things that I say no to now have become almost like part of my personal brand. Like, my friends know that I'm in bed by 8:30. And so that's going to impact some of our social hangs, right?
Yeah.
But I will literally say, like, a friend of mine came over the other day and I said, you're allowed to come for dinner. Like, please come for dinner, but you have to leave by 8 because I need a wind down time. And I didn't even, like, I know how absurd it was to say it, and it probably seems so unwelcoming, but he was just like, you're hilarious. I already know that I'm getting booted out by 8. And true, it was 10 past 8 and I was like, yo, you've overstayed your welcome. Goodbye. And I opened the front door. I was like, get out of my house.
I love this so much.
But I made it sort of joking and lighthearted, but I was also serious. Like, get out of my house. I need to go to bed. But I'm happy to say no to things that start late. When people actually know, they'll say, look, I'm inviting you to this, but I know you probably won't come because it starts at 9 p.m. I'm like, I definitely won't be there. Send me photos the next day.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because I value sleep more than anything.
And your spaciousness, and yourself and what your needs are. Like, you got to leave by 8 because I need wind down time. I need Gina time. I need to reflect and reprocess and recalibrate. And instead of rushing around and going on to the next thing, and you're so, and I think that was something from our last podcast, is you're saying, I rush from task to task, but there is so many moments throughout your day where you're so conscious, you're so connected. Your boundary setting is terrific. Terrific.
Thanks,
I mean, you've just set us up for another podcast, haven't you?
Have
People pleasing, boundaries.
Oh yeah.
Conforming. Yeah. Like, it is a struggle for a lot of people. And I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we encourage people to practice setting boundaries, even small ones, and then build on those, obviously. I think we can't speak enough about it, because that means we can be in true alignment, and where we can act in alignment with who we want to be and our values, as we say.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's kind of like the story you were sharing before about your friend who was staying over and then impacting your capacity to do your MBA in the morning. If I have a late night, it's going to impact my capacity to exercise in the morning. I'm going to be hungrier all day because I haven't slept as well. Like, there's a cascade of events that hinders my life. And that is why I put so much priority and emphasis on that value. But I've had to be aware of it.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. And you would have had you had the instances where your friends stayed, you drank too much, you felt fuzzy and you didn't like it. And I've had the same, where I've stayed up way too late and the cycles happened, and I've done it so many times to the point where I got fed up with it. And I'm like, I don't want my socializing or my friendships to impact my health and well-being and my mental health and my productivity. And it shouldn't have to. And hence the boundaries.
Yes. And because of this reflection, cause and effect. Why am I feeling like this? What just happened? How am I feeling? What do I need?
Yeah.
Like that, if our listeners haven't already, go back and listen to part 1, because I explained, one of the steps to take is to think about what's happened in our day to try and create that consciousness. And that's what you're saying, you're living and breathing. What just happened? Why am I feeling like this? What did I do yesterday? And then there's this pattern. Hang on a minute. Each time this is happening to me. So I absolutely love it. Well done. Incredible.
Yay, go team.
Oh, okay, so we've actually got a member question for you, Gina, which is
Ooh.
awesome. Okay, so this is from Bailey. Bailey is asking, can you recall a specific challenge or setback in your life and how shifting your mindset played a role in overcoming it?
Oh my gosh, yes, many. I'd say the biggest setback that I've had in my life is something I've talked about before, and it's when I found out my ex was cheating on me, and I went through this very traumatic experience where I lost my ability to really even just do the very basics of life, to brush my teeth or to have a shower. It was a massive setback. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't cook myself a meal. I mean, let alone things like exercise and drive a car. Like I was very much in a vegetable state for a little bit of time. And I think the mindset that really helped me the most in overcoming that state and sort of like finding my feet again was letting go of the idea of all or nothing thinking. It's letting go of the idea of, well, yesterday I went to the gym and I did a whole day of work and I cooked a meal. So today I should be able to do that. It's like, no, because yesterday you hadn't experienced what you experienced today. And just because I was able to do something one day doesn't mean that the next day was the same. And so when I was able to focus on really small, consistent steps that are going to get me towards where I want to be, that's when I was able to really shift out of that state and find my feet again. Because when I was trying the all or nothing thing, when I was like, okay, I should be able, this is me. This is what Gina does. I get up, I get ready, I go to the gym, I go to work. Here's a sequence of my life normally. And I didn't have the capacity for that. It was so overwhelming that I was paralyzed. I did nothing. I just did nothing because I couldn't do it all. So shifting mindset from all or nothing was a huge game changer for my life.
Gosh, I mean, it's so powerful. Absolutely. And I often say to my clients, today is not a reflection of my future. And it's just to help them in that moment going, it's okay if today is not like it was yesterday, or it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like that tomorrow either. It's just how it is today.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think the only challenge is when people are into this all or nothing thinking, they discount the fact that they started somewhere and they worked their way up, and then they think they have to start from that where I am today kind of perspective. So I
Yeah.
love that you've answered the way that you did. Just because I had a full day yesterday doesn't mean I've got the capacity to do anything at all today. So
Yeah. And it's this
powerful.
idea of like success is not linear, right? It's up and
Mm-hmm.
down.
It's
Yeah.
very up and down. Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, thank
Incredible.
you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's episode on Eat, Live, and Move with Miyagi. Whatever platform you're listening to today, please hit subscribe so you don't miss out when we drop a new episode. That's all from us. Thanks again, and see you next week for more conversations with me, Gina, and Dr. Ross Walker. See you then.
Bye.